gamers!
Good Game is the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Junglist.
This week, strap yourself in for a rocket bumping group fest of gamage, and we've got so many games we're going to rip the lid off it.
That's so right, Bajo. We have reviews of the latest games. Turning Point, Pipe Buster, and the new adults-only game for the Wii, No More Heroes.
We'll be lifting the lid and asking the big questions of why we pay so much for games in Australia.
Plus, we'll be taking a lesson in vocabulary, gamer style, bloom effects, anti-aliasing, emergent gameplay, these and other wanky gaming terms explained.
But first, can you guess the game for this week?
But first, gamers, time for the news. Better? Oh.
Nintendo's WiiWare channel has gone live in Japan, allowing newly developed games to be downloaded from the Wii's online service for the first time. Up until now, only older games could be downloaded on the Wii's Virtual Console service, but with the launch of WiiWare, big name and independent game developers can now release new downloadable games similar to those found on Xbox Live Arcade or the PlayStation Network. So far, the WiiWare lineup includes an exclusive Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles game called My Life as King, as well as Pokemon Ranch and a variety of smaller puzzle and action games. There is not yet an Australian launch date for the service. Ubisoft have further cemented their relationship with American author Tom Clancy by buying out the intellectual property rights to his name. Ubisoft currently has several Tom Clancy branded game series, including Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six, and Ghost Recon, and the acquisition will allow the game publisher to freely use the author's name on these and other projects into the future without paying any further royalties. The deal was sealed for an undisclosed sum. Sega have officially announced the next outing for their long-serving mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. The speedy blue mammal will star in Sonic Unleashed, a return to his speed-running roots. Rumours also suggest that the game's story will feature Sonic turning into a werewolf, although exactly what this means is not yet clear. The game will mark the first time Sonic has made a solo appearance since the disastrous next-generation Sonic the Hedgehog in 2006, and is planned for a release on Xbox 360, Wii, and PlayStation 3 before the end of the year.
Good game!
Fans of Kingdom Hearts are about to witness the seedier side of clashing American and Japanese cultures in No More Heroes. It's a universe where buying a lightsaber of eBay starts you on the path to become the #1 assassin. And what better way to overtake the competition than by assassinating them?
It definitely has its own style, with things like saving on the toilet and all the retro game sound effects. It's set in the US, but it oozes Japanese pop culture, with pro wrestling and anime references, with karaoke and baseball. You kind of get the feeling throughout the whole game that you're actually just in this guy's dream world as he plays a video game. But the heavy style does little to hide the fact that it's actually a very bad-looking game, and level design is extremely simple.
In your quest to become the #1 assassin, you'll need to ride around the city of Sand to Destroy, which, convenient for you, contains all top 10 assassins. But in order to get to the action, you need to actually make enough money to enter the ranked fight, and this is where No More Heroes kind of loses it.
Too much time is spent driving around the open city when really there's nothing to do but get to your next mission. Often you'll be asked to make unnecessary stops on the way when you could have just gone straight there, and I didn't really see the point of the open city badge when a lot of the missions were held in the same garage anyway.
You're also forced into side missions to make money, and it's kind of grindy. Also, when I'm playing an action game, I don't expect to be collecting garbage and mowing lawns.
Once you finally work up enough money to move forward, you'll have to fight through an army of clones to get to the next boss. This and the actual boss fight are the best parts of the game.
Combat has some stylish animations, and there's some good use of quick-time events with the motion sensors, but there's this one move where the wire always hits you in the head.
The blade clash happens too often to be special, but it's still pretty cool, and boss fights are definitely the highlight of the game. Some of the later sword fights can be pretty intense. But again, you spend way too much time driving around the city doing odd jobs just getting to the boss fight. And after all that, you don't even always get to fight a boss.
After killing 3 enemies, you get a chance to enter super-powered mode, and this always looks cool. I think you're right about the combat being the best part of the game, Jump, but it's not really a kid's game, is it? I mean, there's a lot of swearing here.
Yeah, and the dialogue is just really out there as well. I'm actually thinking a lot of it wasn't translated well for an English audience. Either that or the developers intended for us to not have any idea what's going on, and I wouldn't put it past them. And after all, this is an action game where you can spend a half hour petting your cat.
Meow.
Well, final thoughts?
It's a bit confused as to what kind of game it wants to be. There's a half-assed GTA-style open city, half-assed character customization, even a half-assed Tamagotchi.
Yeah, I mean, combat definitely is the strongest part of the game, but even around that muscle, there's too much fat.
Yeah, I think it's the bosses that really got me through this one and made it an above-average action game for me. There were interesting characters. I kept on wanting to get to the next one, meet him, and whack him. It's 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens from me.
As unique as it is, you can still compare it to other action games and games in the similar genre. And when you do that, the action in something like Devil May Cry completely outshines No More Heroes. However, if you're an action fan and a Wii owner, there's really not that much choice.
Well, hang on, Red Steel was an action game on the Wii.
Like I said, you don't really have that much choice. If you're a fan of Kill Bill and anime, then this is aimed directly at you. But there's quirkiness for quirkiness' sake here. I'm giving it 6 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Now over to you, Gavin Hostman, for a cartridge affair.
Good evening, viewers. Gavin Hostman reporting. This evening, we follow up on a report we showed earlier this week regarding a bill recently passed to increase censorship in the media. The bill put forward will radically change the way violence and adult themes will be portrayed in the future. But what does this change mean for the average citizen? The rating boards have commissioned a series of new and more specific classifications for new video games. Retroactively, many already existing popular games will be censored to comply with these new guidelines.
Ready? Go!
While many sources were initially skeptical about such radical change, the results seem to speak for themselves. After word that Grand Theft Auto 4's weaponry would be replaced with bananas before its release, worldwide gun crime has dropped to 0%, and B vitamin levels have skyrocketed. In an even more surprising scenario, the censoring of Infinity Ward's Call of Duty 4 has led not only to the end of the Middle Eastern conflict, but the entire desert itself has turned into a tropical paradise. A truly reaffirming turn of events. Coming up next, local residents in uproar over the Umbrella Corporation's proposal to begin development in their own town. Will the company's shaky reputation slow development? More after the break.
Good game. Ooh, welcome to The Price is Wrong. Big money, mediocre rewards. Contestant 1, come on down. Contestant 2, come on down. Okay, so contestant 1, name the price of a standard run-of-the-mill video game, somewhere between $0 and all the pocket money you could ever afford in your life. What's your guess?
$35.
Ooh, higher, contestant 2.
$55.
Higher than that, contestant 1.
$69.99.
Ooh, I'm afraid we're looking for higher, contestant 2.
$90?
Higher, contestant 1.
$100.
It's even higher. Have you wondered why the price of a game costs so much more here in Australia than it does in other countries? Same product, massively different price. Why?
With games, the situation globally is one of differential pricing, that depending on what region and market you're in will determine what you pay. And it seems that in Australia, we're actually paying, top whack for games compared to comparable markets such as the US and Europe. And the only good reason for this seems to be that we're prepared, one, they can get away with it, and two, gamers here are prepared to pay for it.
I guess the distributors set price points based on what they think the consumer will be prepared to pay. And generally speaking, that has worked.
Do you think games are too expensive in Australia?
They're okay, I guess. If they lower it a bit, that'd be great. usually at about the $100 mark, which we're used to now.
If it's brand new, it's just too expensive. You usually have to wait and get like the ones that have already been brought back to make it worthwhile buying. Makes it hard for the kids too when they save a bit of money and then go in and it costs about $80.
It's a lot more expensive than where I live. I live in Delaware, in between Philadelphia and New York.
Do you think games are too expensive in Australia?
These days, yes. Prices are a bit too expensive, but yeah, depends on which game, I suppose.
If I told you over in the US it's half the price, how does that make you feel?
Well, I'd like to shop over there if I could go over there.
Do you reckon you'd buy twice as many games if it was...
I don't know if I'd buy twice as many games, but I probably wouldn't be as hesitant to buy them.
I bought a game from America, it was $40, but I can't, and the $100 here, so yeah, there's a difference.
This is Steam, the online game delivery service platform run by Valve Software. In addition to selling their own games, they also sell other developers' products. Take BioShock, for example, from 2K Games, released in August last year. It was a pretty good shooter, well received by gamers and critics alike, and I can get it for just under 50 Australian dollars. Yeah, hey, I'm just trying to find out how much your PC version of BioShock is, please. $89.95. Okay, thank you very much. Bye. Out of the 5 retailers that we called the cheapest we could find was $64.98. Now, even taking into account the effect that getting it online might have on your download limit, and the fact that you don't get an instruction booklet or a box, that's still a substantial price difference. We then hopped on the interwebs to check game retailers from other countries. In Canada, you could get the boxed PC version for 28 Aussie dollars. In the US, it would cost you a little over $32, whereas in the UK, you had to pay a little more at $39. But the cheapest we could find it from an online Aussie company was $89. But what about a more recent release? We checked the 360 version of Army of Two. Gamers in Canada and the US can expect to pay around 65 Aussie dollars. British gamers can expect a more hefty price tag of around $85, whereas Australians would be lucky to find it for under $100. So why then would Aussie gamers walk into a shop?
You can download games, or you can order them overseas and get them sent, but there really is, for many people, no substitute for going into that store and handing over their hot little dollars and walking away with that box or that disc or that slick or whatever. That's what the manufacturers count on, that there will always be people. You can get things in a cheaper way. They will take longer. They're not as convenient as going to a store, but for that convenience of going into a store, you do end up paying for it.
Lots of local gamers are choosing to save money by importing games instead of buying them locally. Does that affect your business?
Well, being an online store, our customer base are certainly the ones who are shopping around online and looking at overseas pricing, and it is certainly affecting some of our sales. Well, if all Australian gamers bought their games from overseas, there would be no Australian distribution, no Australian supply chain, no retailers and support here for Australian gamers.
As consumers, we do have the power. They need our money, they need our custom, and if we choose to withhold that or give it to them conditionally or do whatever, we have a lot more power as consumers than we realise, and gamers, especially given their access to technology and their savviness and, I think the kind of sense of people who they are in a position, we would hope, where they actually can get a fairer deal.
What do you think, gamers? Are you happy with the price that you pay for games in Australia? Do you import them from overseas? Rent them? Borrow them from mates? Jump on the forums and leave your thoughts.
Now, the ideas phase for the Good Game project has closed, and our expert panel of judges, including the developer who's going to help us build the game, Steve Faulkner and his team at Infinite Interactive, famous for Puzzle Quest, are hard at work going through all of your entries.
We had well over 400 entries. Here's some of them. Taylor from Queensland sent in Full Turtle Racket, great name. Get baby sea turtles to the safety of the ocean whilst avoiding seagulls, crabs, and humans.
Michael from Victoria suggests Outback Rescue, saving daft wandering tourists from various Australian locations, including desert, rainforest, and the snowy mountains.
Troy from New South Wales thinks our game should be set in the dog-eat-dog world of Office Wars, where you need to do just about anything, including working hard, but only as a last resort, to get to the top.
Now, just a small sample there, but a big thank you to everyone who sent in an idea. We'll be following the judges' progress and keeping you updated. Pipe Buster is a turn-based puzzler meets MMO released across all platforms.
The game has two sides with very different playstyles. As player one, you play the role of a town planner in charge of laying a network of pipes to deliver the town's waste products safely to the recycling facility. Trouble is, not all your pipes are of equal standard, and you have limited funds to purchase pipes in the first place.
As player 2, you're in charge of a character whose job it is to attempt to create the Pipe Buster. Now, what goes in must come out, right, Jung? So if you feed your character more healthy food and roughage, you've got more chance of creating that ultimate Pipe Buster.
And when you do, this happens. The trouble is, once you've let your Pipe Buster loose, your fields are polluted with sewage, making it harder to grow the healthy food. This forces you to eat junk, lowering the quality of your product, and giving more time to player one to repair the pipe network and remove any weak points.
They've done a great job with balance here, haven't they, Jung? I mean, just when you think you've got a perfect network of unbreakable pipes, the other player will snap off a monster, laying waste to everything you've created.
And choosing when to deliver the Pipe Buster is key. Too soon and you'll see your brown torpedo sail merrily towards oblivion at the sewage farm. Wait too long and you could risk your life delivering it.
I thought they did a good job with the power-ups as well, Jung. You know, the emergency pipe fix for player 1 and the bonus with the laxative effect for player 2. It adds a complexity and I think a hidden depth that you don't discover straight away. Final thoughts?
I really like the character customization as player 2, which was almost infinite. And I have to award extra points for the sound effects, which was spot on and made great use of 5.1 surround. I'll definitely be putting more hours into this one. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 chicken nuggets.
Yeah, the downloadable content was a bit of a letdown for me, and you know, often in a game like this, you always prefer one side to the other, but I actually enjoyed playing both sides here. You know, it's challenging, it's fun, and I really hope there's a number 2 in the pipeline. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
Underling, why you look so tired?
I cannot keep up my strength.
Well, what you eating?
I have not time to prepare meal, so I eat quick food I find on floor of cave.
Underling, quick foods such as hive honey and frozen bunny may seem like they get you to the hunt quicker, but you lose stamina and rot your teeth.
What can I do to get my warrior strength back?
You need to eat well, Underling. Take regular breaks, drink vitamin drink, cook meals yourself. Only then will you have energy in morning, more strength to hunt.
Tribal leader, you are truly wise.
Good game.
Well, I thought the anti-aliased bloom effects accentuated the emergent gameplay. What did you think?
What's a bloom effect?
Noob. Has this ever happened to you? Do you find yourself ridiculed by uber pros with muscular gaming vocabularies? Well, we're here to help with Good Game's guide to self-indulgent gaming terms. Bloom lighting, for example. See that bright white light and the glowing effect around the light sources? That's bloom lighting. It's a visual effect that's been lifted directly from photography, and it simulates the way a real camera captures different brightness levels. One of the first games to use it was Ico on the PlayStation 2, but since then it's become extremely popular, making its way into games like God of War, Zelda Twilight Princess, and many more. Next up is draw distance. Draw distance is a term used to describe how far you can see into the horizon, something that's particularly important in open world games like Crackdown, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, or Grand Theft Auto. A good draw distance allows you to see all the way to the edge of the world. A bad one usually uses a curtain of fog to stop you seeing that far ahead. Anti-aliasing is another pompous gaming term that would-be boffins like to throw around, but what does it mean? Here we have Halo 3. Notice that the edges of many objects are jagged and pixelated. That's what we call jaggies. Simply put, jaggies look rubbish, and that's where anti-aliasing comes in. It's a process that softens the image on screen until the jagged edges disappear. Too much anti-aliasing and a game can look blurry, but just enough and everything will look super smooth. Here's another one. Do you know what emergent gameplay means? Of course you don't. Nobody does. Emergent gameplay is used to describe games that end up doing things that their designers never expected them to do. Rocket jumping in the original Quake, for example, was never planned by developers id Software. It was just something that experimenting players discovered they could do, and it opened up a whole new way to play the game. The term emergent gameplay is also applied to games that give players complete freedom to do whatever they want. These are sometimes called sandbox games, which just happens to be another snobbish gaming term that we're going to lift the lid on. Sandbox games generally drop you into a huge open world, give you a few simple rules to stick to, and then leave you to your own devices. Games like Grand Theft Auto and Crackdown are often likened to a sandbox because they provide you with so many options, from flying planes to leaping through the air like a superhero, allowing you to make your own fun within the boundaries of the game world.
You sure do like to push your luck.
So the next time some know-it-all throws their most baffling gaming terminology at you, you can throw some right back at them. Give it a try. We think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I disagree. I think the sandbox was too sandy, the anti-aliasing was far too aliased, and the blooming effects were so bloomy.
Your lateness intrigues me. How are your bloom effects doing today, Junglist?
Anti-aliasing nicely.
Oh, good. Turning Point Fall of Liberty for PC and Xbox 360 is a first-person shooter set in an alternate universe where the Nazis have control of Europe and eventually decide to invade America, starting with New York. We reviewed the 360 version.
Having had extra time to upgrade their weaponry, the Nazis take control, and it's up to you, a lone construction worker, to make them get out.
Yeah, and it's never really explained how he can disarm bombs and shoot a variety of weapons so effectively.
Well, it is New York, Badger. After an exciting and explosive first level, the US Army is more than happy to put all their faith in you to take on the invasion.
Carson, see if you can do something about that machine gun.
Weapons are very World War II, but beefed up and more shiny. They're also fairly uninteresting, and it's only until you start getting the sniper rifles and the shotguns that the pace picks up.
If only the frame rate could do the same, Jung. This game has problems. Any kind of smoke or small explosion and it's a total frame skip party. Texture popping and graphical glitches are everywhere, and often textures won't load until well after you've seen them. This makes the level of detail inconsistent all the way through the game.
Alongside that, enemies stick through walls and scripted events don't load on time. Just as an example, we walked into a room and saw two people standing apart from each other fairly awkwardly before they teleported into each other for a hug.
And some of the triggers for these were placed terribly, Jung. Often you'll see teammates up ahead frozen in time, waiting for you to come up and start the action sequence. It just felt like the game wasn't loading fast enough for the pace that I was going through it, and this really takes you out of the moment.
Close combat kills were too easy, but using human shields was effective and the camera angle was interesting. We also liked how if you threw one grenade and then threw a second one, they would blow each other up, which makes sense, but you don't often see it in shooters. Unfortunately, there's not much else that we liked about the game.
Artificial intelligence felt dated. Often enemies don't realize you're shooting them, and at times they seem to have psychic abilities and know where you are even before you've walked through the door. Enemies also seem to be shooting at right angles sometimes, and they're shooting through walls, and your squad mates shoot through the floor. The list goes on.
Enemies don't take cover well and sometimes just stand out in the open. Animations were gimped too. There's no fluidity to their action sequences. Sometimes they just turn on the spot as if they're on a rotating platform, and often they just pop into action instead of animating.
Junk, what I like about World War II games is the authenticity of the weapons and the guns and the vehicles and the locations. What Turning Point tries to do is take a done-to-death genre and make it more interesting by changing history and technology. Something's kind of lost in this transition, though, and it's just not really much fun.
We spoke to Dean Martinetti at E3 last year while he was working on the project.
It's only a game, and you know we all know that, but you see this alternate history, and we took facts from actual history and incorporated it into the game, like their weaponry and whatnot. And you see these things unfolding, and you see like the Chrysler Building getting destroyed, like just getting leveled to the ground. That's pretty powerful stuff. You know, the White House getting destroyed. Very, very powerful images. So I think it should fuel a lot of people when they're playing it. The idea was to piss people off when they're playing the game. Not because the game's complicated, but because they see these things and they go, well, I'm not gonna let that happen. You know, I'm going to fight back.
Yeah, it's easy to see what they were trying to do there, Badge, but I felt that they were too reliant on their story, their hook. You know, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what kind of emotions they incite in the player because of all the technical flaws.
Yeah, if it was set in Australia and maybe Nazi flags were hanging from the harbour bridge, I'd have more interest in this game, but Turning Point just isn't up to scratch for its platform. And if it feels like we're being nitpicky here, it's just because there's not much else to talk about with Turning Point. I've had much more fun with Medal of Honor games on the PS2, Jung. I'm giving it 5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
We haven't had a chance to test out the multiplayer yet because at the time of recording, the game wasn't online, so there might be some fun to be had there. But we're not putting the game back in just in case bad gameplay is contagious. I'm giving it 5 as well.
Good game.
So gamers, did you guess the game for this week?
It was Toilet Kids, a very strange vertical shooter released for the NEC PC Engine. You play as a kid who's been warped via his toilet into a strange world of flying bottoms, poos, and lavatories, all of which you have to shoot from your own flying toilet.
The game had a 2-player mode and besides its unusual subject matter, was renowned for being incredibly difficult.
Next week we'll be testing out our brain cells with the new puzzle game on the DS, Professor Layton and the Curious Village.
And we'll be looking at the independently produced and released Sins of the Solar Empire, strategy and spec.
Lux investigates the healing properties of gaming. We talked to some gamers who have been using games to get over some serious medical problems. Till next week, gamers, Junglist out.
Bajo out.